Alright folks, we're off again, and my voice is cracking like no tomorrow. Hey gang, welcome to round 3 of our Nevicast. Today we got just the three amigos with us. There's myself, of course, y'all know me. And then right next to me...
It's the delivery man, Adan.
Who's here to deliver love.
That's right. All but love.
Yes, exactly. And then of course next to him is...
Das ist der Hans. I
Man,
bring you doom.
Man, a few words right there, everybody.
Doom.
Alright, so, yeah, like I said, just got the three of us tonight, so we're just going to get right off and kicking into it. So, yeah, pretty much like in gaming stuffs right now, the two major things that are going around that I'm seeing a lot are... Everybody is, starting to cream over Zelda like no tomorrow.
Breath of the Tony Hawk.
Breath of the Tony Hawk. Because if whenever you guys get a chance when you hear this, just go on YouTube, type in, look for Zelda Extreme Sports Edition. And it's basically, one of those, compilation videos where they just sit there and show all the crazy stuff that Link can do in Breath of the Wild. Which, of course, the main one that everybody's been seeing a lot lately is where they have Link, shield surfing all over the place. So it's like shield surf, sail, paraglide down to a point, shield surf some more. Yeah, just hilarious stuff. Right now, the way it stands, a lot of the review outlets and whatnot, they're kind of doing, mini previews, but they can't really do anything extensive on the game until March the 2nd. Right now, Nintendo embargo only allows for the first 5 hours of the game to be covered. So, anything after that, you gotta wait till the day before the Switch comes out. But, that being said, there was one review outlet, Edge, that has a Breath of the Wild review coming out, imminently, which was really surprising because it was one of only, I think, a very select few games that actually got awarded a 10, by them. Edge, which is just a really very stringent publication when it comes to game reviews. So I was kind of really surprised by that. There are a lot of what critics and whatnot have been saying. Again, they can't really talk about much, but they're starting to make a lot of comparisons between what Breath of the Wild can do to what Ocarina of Time did for 3D adventure games back in the day. So, yeah, it's kind of starting to sound like this actually might be worth the hype.
So, in Breath of the Wild, does Link need to eat?
Needs to eat, has to be careful about...
Hypothermia.
Yeah, this is kind of almost like a very hyper Skyrim survival mode. As I talked to Rum about it the other day. He was because when I described to him a lot of the stuff that Link has to do just to get by, and that, enemies are a lot tougher, you can die a lot easier, you're expected to die quite a bit, and yeah, he basically just said, so it's basically like survival mode from Skyrim on steroids. Yeah, you could say that.
So what happens if you do cash in your chips in Breath of the Wild? Do you go back to a bonfire? Do you have to load?
What happens is that it loads you into an area that's right before the area you died. So if you die in a camp, it'll kind of teleport you slightly outside of it. So either you could replan your objectives, or if they're just way too strong for you, you can just go back in and start from the beginning. Go to another area.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. They actually don't mind, if it's too rough for you, it's okay, because you can come back after, you've gotten stronger, and just get back in there and tackle them on a later point in time.
But that brings up an idea for a superhero action game. Say you screw the pooch going up against the big bad. Why doesn't the game come in and have a chance for you to retcon it?
That is true. Although that did kind of happen, though, to an extent with the first Prince of Persia game, Sands of Time.
Yeah, you're right. So it has been done. My mistake.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's not a mechanic that really gets used enough.
No.
If you really think about it.
That, and it would be cool to give it the fourth wall breaking thing that seems to be all the rage these days, which, if you read between the lines, is just lazy writing. But that would be really neat to, oh, the hero has died. The day is not saved. Are you sure that's what happened?
Yeah, this is very true. But yeah, as always, like I will be getting the Switch myself on the 3rd, along with Zelda Breath of the Wild, and as I progress through the game and whatnot, I'll be constantly updating with my impressions, and actually probably have a proper review up on the site pretty soon. So just keep a lookout for that. The other big news that kind of leapt out of nowhere this week was Final Fantasy 15. So a very reputable leaker who leaked a lot of the information about the game in the first place ended up leaking out some details of DLC that's upcoming towards the game. A lot of it is going to be about adding, like you know, Tabata had talked about when the game came out. A lot of it is about stuff that is going to be storyline content additions, namely adding in cutscenes that help explain out a lot of the stuff, especially regarding Chapter 13, if anybody's gotten to it yet. The most interesting part, though, is that they're going to add in a DLC that's called the World of Verses. Trying not to get too much into spoiler territory, but basically, like, the most I can say is at a certain point of the game, not, you know, like, you do the usual, you know, lose the hero bit for a little while, and it's basically going to play out as a dream sequence, if that makes sense. So just think like a longer version of the Platinum demo. But yeah, I mean, having that in addition to the Season Pass stuff to begin with is really starting to make 15 seem like a really good choice. Especially with the rumors going around about how the multiplayer is going to work. So, yeah, I'm pretty stoked for that.
There's multiplayer?
Yeah, expert commenting from Hans there.
I do what I can.
Yeah. But yeah, like for those who don't know, they're basically getting ready to add like a multiplayer mode into the game. Going to have avatar creation, you know, basically you and 4 of your broskies go out and go slay stuff.
Is it just going to be broskies?
Could be lady skis as well. I mean, it'll be any type of ski.
A ski?
A ski.
But can you ski with your whatever skis?
Well, we put a ski inside your ski so you can ski while you ski.
But I don't know how to ski, and that sounds obscene, so I'm probably not going to do that in a group with you guys. I'll go into the bathroom if I need to ski real bad.
Oh, boy. And we just took the joke way too far.
As that's what we do here at the Nevicast Group. Your source for beating dead horses.
Indeed. There is one thing I did want to talk about a little bit real fast, and then we'll kind of wrap up with tonight's gaming talk. This is kind of going to be the long form bit, but what the hell has happened to VR? You know, as you guys remember, like, you know, when the Oculus Rift started coming around, everybody was just like, yeah, bro, VR is going to be the new shit. And then you saw everybody getting involved in VR technology. You know, you had, of course, you know, HTC Vive, which was the other major player coming out. You had Sony tipping in their hands with PlayStation VR. And it was like looking like, okay, VR is going to be the new stuff. It's going to be the new deal. It's finally going to take off, you know. And ever since, we really haven't heard about a lot of really exclusive VR experiences. So, you know, I'm kind of wondering, you know, it's like, is this really something that's going to be a viable gaming complement for the future? Or is this something that's going to be kind of a fad again, and then within a couple years it's going to go away, kind of like 3D TV has?
My vote is that it's probably going to be a fad, because from what I've read on the subject, to do something in VR, you have to design it from the ground up to be VR. This isn't something you can just kind of retcon in there like Wii U gamepad support or things like that. You actually have to go in, and your plan is to make a VR experience. But the thing is, I'd wager that a lot of developers have cold feet about it because this is not the first foray we've had into VR. I think it was about the mid-90s at, I think the store was called Incredible Universe, which is now closed, at least in our area, but they had a VR display. It was roughly PSX caliber graphics, and it gave you motion sickness if you did it too long, but that's neither here nor there. It has been around, but it's never really had that punch to make it the thing. So I'm not sure if it ever will have that punch to make it the thing until we can completely immerse ourselves in something. Because at the end of the day, most people play video games to escape.
It's either that or VR porn takes off even more than it already has.
Yeah, that's probably what a lot of people want to escape their sex lives or lack thereof.
Yeah. I don't know, Don, did you ever get a chance to try out any VR stuff yet?
I tried the dinosaur going into the room and the spider.
Oh, they
thing.
don't take your hand off. They have like a key where you're supposed to hold your hand on it, and they throw all this crap at you.
That's it.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. That was, okay, yeah. So, yeah, I have a little bit of backstory for this. So, last year, we were all doing Extra Life. And Rum has a VR headset himself. He has the OSVR, which is supposed to be this, like, nice open source alternative from Razer, which is supposed to be, you know, much more affordable. Because it was only, like, $400 before tax versus the near $600 and near, like, I think $900 for HTC Vive and Oculus. So yeah, it was kind of considered to be like a nice little cheap alternative. And I remember him getting it up and running. It was kind of like cutesy, but you know, again, you know, it's just like having a lot of dedicated experiences was kind of rough. But I mean, like, what was your experience with it, Adan? Was it like neat to you, or something you want to like look into long term?
Well, I think it has potential, because it was interesting to see a dinosaur walk into a room and a spider crawl on your face, but like Hans was saying, it needs to be more immersive than what it is now.
That, and it's a lot of what you've seen with the Wii,
yes,
to be exact.
That's right.
Because the nunchuck was a really cool idea when you're playing tennis for a couple hours.
You mean the Wiimote?
Yes. Nunchuck, Wiimote. Sorry. My apologies, you radio viewers. I'm still going with that announcer voice, and all you out there in Radio Land, I apologize for my faux pas. I meant to say Wiimote, but the Wiimote was neat when you used it for a couple of hours. After that, you went back to playing Street Fighter 4 on your controller, or whatever you were prone to play at the time.
Yeah, there was also the Wii Party with darts and the cup game. You throw a ball into a cup.
Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. I never owned that particular Wii game myself, but we did get a little, like, Wii Sports, especially the bowling, got a lot of mileage. I mean, I played a whole ton of Wii games during the lifetime of it. It had some pretty good uses, but again, you know, like, there was still that barrier. Like, it did a lot of good to knock down gaming barriers for older gamers, like folks who had never touched a video game console before. But then they kind of all moved on to tablets anyway. So,
yeah,
smartphone
right.
gaming.
Yeah.
But that's a completely different tangent for here or there. But yeah, I'm kind of the same way as you guys. I mean, I think VR has a lot of potential, but it's just still hasn't cracked it yet. It just really needs to, for one, the price point needs to come down to more mass market prices.
Agreed.
And the tech doesn't need to be so fucking, you know, much of a pain in the ass to put together. Like, I'll give you a good example, like with this OSVR headset, and I'm going to be truncating this. Like, when Rum comes back on the podcast, I'll probably just let him go completely off on this bit, because he can do this in much better detail than I can. But the night of Extra Life, he sat there and had to spend, you know, like, we got there about, what, like 9, 10 o'clock? He was spending almost till, like, 2, 3 in the morning trying to set up that OSVR. Because with a lot of VR machines, you can't just plug the fucking goggles deal into the computer and be like, okay, we have VR. You have to sit there and like do calibrations. It has like an onboard sensor that you've got to set up on top of your monitor so that it can detect the because of head tracking. And it's just like a nightmare to like get working properly. When he first got it, it took him a good first he had to get the unit replaced because it wasn't loaded with the right firmware. And then when he got it back, it still took like a good week or so for him to get it calibrated properly. And if you take the OSVR to another location, then you've got to spend an inordinate amount of time trying to recalibrate the motherfucker all over again. So it's just a complete, again, it's a nightmare to set up. So yeah, I'm just not I think it's getting there, but I think it needs a few more years of baking in the oven.
Yeah, I would say good 10 years. Maybe 7.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking too. We'll know when VR is ready when Nintendo puts out a VR machine.
That's right.
Because knowing how conservative they are, the only time that they will ever put out something that's like a forward-thinking technology is that if it's already been kind of solved by everybody else, and then they go put their own spin on it.
But let's not forget the Virtual Boy.
Oh, good lord.
That was quasi-virtual reality.
Also quasi-motion sickness, too.
Oh, no, that wasn't quasi-motion sickness. That was praying to the porcelain goddess if you play for more than 3 hours.
This is true. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up, I think, a lot of our gaming discussion for this week. So yeah, we're going to try something a little bit new, something a little bit different. If you guys kind of have noticed over the if you guys have kind of noticed over the last couple of Nevicasts, Adan over here is usually the kind of guy that we'll sit there and myself and Hans will go over a lot of topics, and then he'll just be like, yeah, I like that scene too. So we're actually kind of gonna give him a few moments. We're gonna give him a chance to go completely off and just talk about some stuff that relating to gaming, anime, all that nice little stuff that he kind of some stuff that we might miss in our constant quest for dick and fart jokes. So everybody, welcome to Adan's Corner.
Okay. This is an adult show, by the way. You'll hear cursing and a lot of potty language.
Yes.
I, unfortunately, am not a gamer. So that's why you hear me so little, because I don't know anything. I'm just completely ignorant. However, I really enjoy psychological and philosophical subjects, religions and symbolism, shit like that. And so what I want to talk about today is an anime called Psychopaths. And it's really interesting because it's about a dystopian reality. Of course, another dystopian reality. And everybody's happy. And there is the technology that allows for this group, the people who are the political leaders can have technology that allows them to find criminals before they become criminals. So this show explores a lot of different ideas, a lot of really cool ideas, in my opinion. So one of the ideas would be how can we really know who a criminal is? When does it start? Can we really find through statistics people who can we predict criminality? That to me is very interesting. And another show, another idea of the show is that would we like to live in a world where everything is predictable and measurable and very monotonous? And so for those of you who have not seen it, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but there are 2 seasons, and the first season deals with horrible murders done by a person that no one can find because the technology can't find him. And so it's about the group of people that are in charge of finding this guy, and it's about the reasons why he does these killings and how he does it, which addresses this idea of being a statistic and what happens when in a perfect world where you are forced to be happy, you're forced into reality, like into insanity. So that's the first season. The second season deals with a glitch in the system, so I'm not gonna go into that. But anyway, I was discussing this with Chris, and there are people that say that the first season is better than the second season. So Chris brought an interesting point, which I will allow him to talk about.
So yeah, like, for a lot of people who don't know, the first season of Psycho Pass was pretty much spearheaded by Gero Ubochi, whom, for those who don't quite know who he is, he's pretty much the guy who wrote Madoka Magica. He's behind the whole Fate Stay series. For Tokusatsu fans, he wrote Kamen Rider Gaim. Basically, also another really good one that recently came out, the puppet show Thunderbolt Fantasy. First Psycho Pass series was all him, and the second series, however, he didn't have anything to do with writing it. He was basically kind of the equivalent of an executive producer. He was there to just kind of make sure everything was rolling around, but he had no creative input into the story, no direction, any of that stuff. So, to be honest, it kind of almost feels like the second series of Psycho Pass might be getting flack because a lot of the fan favorites writer was not involved with the show.
So, and I agree with that, because in my opinion, the first season and the second season are equally as good. And another issue that is addressed in both seasons of the show is the power of the individual in society. How a society is formed of individuals, and we need to recognize that the individual has to exist in a complex society. They play with the idea of having people live in a they are convinced that they should do things a certain way at a certain time every day. So it's mass brainwash.
Yeah, it kind of plays one of the major themes of a lot of anime that comes up in is kind of the sort of fight between the nature of Japanese culture versus individualism. With Japanese culture, you're basically kind of almost trained to where the concept of the individual really isn't there. Like, you're supposed to fall in line, take care of stuff at this time, at this day, at this hour. When you get done with school, you then, go into the workforce as a salaryman. You can, if you're a woman, you can go in as a salary woman for a little bit. But of course, when you get married and have a child, you're expected to quit your job and be a mother for the rest of your life. And salary men are just supposed to work, insanely long hours. And if you can make it, you can make it. But if you don't make it, then you might as well just kill yourself because you're no good. So yeah, like a lot of anime and manga and light novels seem to kind of address the sort of rebellion about that concept, because there are a lot of people who are just like, fuck this shit, but it's hard for them to express it, especially with the way the Japanese language is so about double entendres and, different meanings to every single word, and how, even when it comes to something like saying the words "I love you," it's kind of almost impossible for Japanese to do it. They can't be direct, in other words. So one of the best direct means of addressing these issues is usually through creative works. So it's kind of interesting how Psycho-Pass tackles that.
Yes, another really interesting idea that they play around with, and they use like very graphic images deliberately. And in this world, because people are so brainwashed, when something happens that they have not been exposed to for decades, they don't see it because it doesn't exist. And I thought that idea is very interesting. Like, what happens to the person that is exposed to something that has not happened to them for so long that they can't recognize it anymore?
Yeah, that is true. That is a pretty interesting take on things, introducing that foreign element into a person's, daily routine or thought process, or, it can be pretty scary stuff, because a lot of times when you've been programmed to do something a certain way for so long, when something different comes along, you're just like, oh, fuck, what do I do? Yeah, so when you combine that with the series Pachant for Pre-Crime, which is very, reminiscent of like Minority Report and stuff of that ilk, it makes for a very compelling series overall. And like I said, it may be just one of those cases where, the second series just doesn't get enough credit, because it's not the same folks working on it necessarily. So, either way, like, the best thing we can recommend is, give both seasons a try. Watch them all with, without opinion and without prejudice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And there we go.
There we go.
Yeah. So, yeah. And we'll go ahead and wrap up with Don's Corner this week. And, yeah, we'll be doing this every week as always. So, it's always going to be good times and good fun and good discussion.
If there are any existential quandaries you'd like to pose for the delivery man, feel free to leave them as a comment on this webcast.
Please do.
Yeah, definitely. We're always taking suggestions. So, all right. So at this point,
Unless it's shut up and go away. We won't take that suggestion.
No, we won't. But yeah, like, let's go ahead and like kind of transition over. Let's talk some dank animus. It's anime time, bros. So, all right, so in the big news thing I want to talk about is earlier this week, or should I say last week, Funimation had to announce that there was a massive data breach in their system.
Like, massive.
Yeah. Which, fortunately, it was the same database system that Crunchyroll uses as well. So, yeah, basically hackers got into essentially the same database for Funimation and Crunchyroll accounts. And, like, from what Funimation has said is that they didn't have anything, like, super sensitive on there, like credit card information. But still, it's the fact that, like, I think it was, like over almost 3 million accounts were affected by the data breach.
Yeah.
And it's just like, holy's Batman. Which, yeah, by the way, if you haven't changed your Funimation and Crunchyroll passwords, you might want to do so now.
Yeah. I mean, because the thing is, now, do we really know they didn't get that information? They're telling us that it didn't happen, but do we know?
That is true, you know, and it kind of sucks to be paranoid about that kind of stuff, but in today's, you know, cybersecurity kind of state, you really need to be careful and protective over that information, you know. So yeah, for anybody who is like, the best way to check it out to see if any other further stuff has been hacked is go to the site haveibeenpwned.com, and that will tell you, like, if you've been hacked on any of your, like, email sites, any, like, websites that you have accounts at, all that nice little stuff, so you can get in there and get that cleared up, because nobody wants to wake up to somebody taking, you know, $500 out of your account from Africa.
Yes.
And I should know, because I had that happen to me.
That sucks.
Yeah. Another kind of news item that came out of nowhere is that Fairy Tail is actually on its final journey. The mangaka revealed at the latest movie production meeting or whatnot that essentially Fairy Tail is already in its final arc, and that the manga will be drawing to a close here pretty soon.
That's a little bit sad, but it had to end sometime.
Yeah. Out of everybody here, like, I haven't gotten, like, super deep into the anime. Like, probably the best expert on this would be Rum, but, like, he generally, like, the general deal about the Fairy Tail anime is much more positively held than a lot of other modern shonen anime. Mainly because of the mangaka's determination to actually, you know, make sure the animation standards are always kept up to quality, which is why he's moving it to a different studio again. And also the fact that, like, even the filler arcs are made in conjunction with the mangaka, so they're not part of the manga, but they're still part of the story. So it's kind of like Fairy Tail does a lot in its anime to kind of separate itself out from a lot of its competitors.
For listeners that have heard me before, know that I can only watch dubs because I'm visually impaired and I can't see the sub animes. So I've gone as far as the latest dub in Fairy Tail, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a well done anime, but the themes were. See, you watch Fairy Tail not because of the arcs, really. You watch it because of the characters. So it's an anime about characters more than story. The themes start getting repetitive, and I think that's another reason why they also wanted to make it the last one.
Yeah,
you can only do so much.
That's generally what I've heard as well about the Fairy Tail story in general, is that it's basically, it lives and dies on its characters, because everything kind of becomes, all the arcs become similar as you go on through the series, more so than a lot of other shonen manga.
Agreed.
Although by that token, the merchandising, you're never going to sell a family reunion plushie or, you know, the value of belonging to a group keychain. Actually, that might not be a bad idea. Stay tuned for Nevidebla, the value of belonging to a group keychain.
Value of friendship. That's another one.
I don't know if we could take the value of friendship, though, because I think, like, Steven Universe has that taken.
Oh, okay.
But, anywho.
Well, in that case, we'll just have Follow Your Dreams, the coffee mug.
That's all animes, isn't it?
That is kind of all anime. That's like the basic, like, shonen archetype. It's like, follow your nose!
Yes.
No, wait a minute.
That's
that
right.
was Fruit Loops.
Yes, it was. Most shonen series are more about, you know, things that they want to cultivate in the youth. Like I mentioned, the value of belonging to a group. Look at most shonen series. They have a central group that the main character or characters are a part of. In Fairy Tail, it's the Fairy Tail Guild. For Goku and Dragon Ball, and, well, Dragon Ball Z at least, it's the Z Fighters.
Although, let's be honest, with Goku, he's pretty much just, it's more about just himself.
True.
It's kind of like, that infamous meme pic. It's like, you can't raise your kids if you're having to train.
But he's got Vegeta. Vegeta's kind of a contemporary.
Vegeta actually cares about his family, though. Let's be honest.
Well, he's the non-dick member of that group. But you've got Naruto, all of the ninjas. That's a very big group. You've got Soul Society and Bleach. I could go on.
Yeah, well, we don't want to, Bleach has fallen from grace, so.
Yes, it has.
Which leads into another interesting topic. It's like, for the longest time, like, especially like when I personally got back into anime, it was during the rise of the big three, which were Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece. And it was just like, yeah, Soul Society is awesome. That Haku fight was amazing. And of course, in the years since, things have kind of gotten particularly interesting.
Shark
jumpy for sure.
Also, they forgot what the meaning of the word final is.
Yeah.
I'm going to use this final ability, and then all my abilities will be gone, but it's worth it to save my precious friends. Mm-hmm. Weeks later, hey, what are you doing with that power you used finally? Oh, shut your goddamn hole.
Yeah, so basically, what we're having to see happen now is a lot of the popular manga that kind of started in the late 90s and 2000s and whatnot are kind of coming to a close. Bleach has already wrapped up its arc recently to very horrible...
Thank goodness.
very horrible reviews. Naruto, of course, completed its stuff in the manga anyway, like a good year or so ago, even though the anime is still going strong like no tomorrow. So that kind of leaves One Piece right now is like the big one. One would think that Fairy Tail would jump into that spot because it's been always a strong top 10 contender, but right now, hell, even Fairy Tail is coming to an end. So like the question we have to pose right now is, what are going to be the next big three? Well, we already know One Piece is one of them because One Piece, that thing prints money. Just has no signs of ending anytime soon. That manga could probably go on for another 10 years and still be profitable. So, what are the other big two to consider at this point?
You have to really look at what makes something big.
My Hero Academia is one, I think.
Yeah.
I would say that it's popular, but it probably won't break into that magic number of we own this rag.
Well, I mean, sometimes it does kind of depend. Because usually, like, as they explain out in very good detail in Bakuman, usually, like, the popularity of a series becoming a top series, like, locked in, is really dependent upon when it gets its anime.
True.
And, like, My Hero Academia, I remember the buzz for that even well before the anime had come out. Because the story was so, like, again, it was very similar to another contender, which we'll talk about in a minute, in that it kind of reverses some of the tropes that are normally dealt upon shonen manga. Especially with, like, Deku and his situation and how he even becomes a hero and starts to become a hero in the first place. And like, so it already had a lot going for it to begin with, and I think that the manga or the anime coming out, I think has the potential to shoot it up there. Now, the only thing that could hold it back is what's been happening with a lot of anime funding to begin with lately, because I kind of do feel that Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece are kind of the last bastions of anime, like along with Fairy Tail, where they just try to pump out as many episodes as possible, even if they have to do filler. Whereas a lot of the more modern anime that's coming out nowadays is pretty much more, 13 episode core series. So you're not getting that constant exposure in order for a series to work. So, yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts about that, Adan?
So, my thoughts are speaking of the tropes. I think that Naruto, Bleach, and what was the other one? Naruto. Oh, and One Piece were so successful because they further stereotypes. Like, their characters are all stereotypes of one way or another, and so people, in my opinion, will attach themselves to a stereotype because they're lazy, and it's easy and it's predictable, and an example would be Hinata, the girl that likes Naruto, and it's like that whole like, oh, please pay attention to me, blah blah, like you don't see me shit. And like One Piece had that, Bleach had that. Like, the female characters were very stereotypical.
One Piece probably to a lesser extent. Bleach and Naruto have some pretty big similarities in that. One Piece kind of is like, there's really not much as far as romance that goes on in One Piece, unless it's like, you know, when Luffy goes somewhere, you know, if it's a girl that's like the main sort of co-protagonist of that particular arc, some of them might be, oh, Luffy, you're so strong and whatnot, but, you know, Oda in his writing kind of makes it very apparent that, like, there's not really about romance to be had in this story. Yeah. It's more about the crew and Luffy and his peeps. So
and that's it. Like, the value of friendship and the value of a group.
Yeah, you know. That's the one similarity that all of those big three do share. But there's not a whole ton of stories that have come out that have kind of continued that. If the one thing I do see that in, it's a lot of the sports manga and anime that have come out in recent years, like Haikyuu, the volleyball series. Like, really, really starting to hit its stride here in the States now. Like, when we went to A-Kon this past year, tons of folks in the volleyball uniforms, man.
And so I think that they ran so long because of stereotypes being so easily consumed by the public.
Yeah.
And the audience has changed now, and it's like, okay, this is boring now.
Well, that and like, go ahead, Hans.
I was going to say that you notice a large trend in media of, oh, I'm so clever, I get the joke and I'm flouting it, tee-hee. The thing is, people tune into media so that they can kind of take a vacation. The thing is, if you've got these commedia dell'arte stereotypes, then you can see a character, you can watch them for a few minutes, you can label them. You can identify them as, okay, that's the hero. He's going to be courageous and a little stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas, are they really trying that hard to deconstruct the genre?
Right.
I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right. I
that
think that's
is true. I mean, that's definitely what helped contribute to those two shows, those three series longevity. But thinking in it that way, then, I mean, like, what has the, like, do we think that the best series that are going to break out are ones that continue to follow that template? Or are the next two series that join One Piece going to be those that kind of subvert the template? Now, I know amongst this table, we kind of have a preference for shows that subvert that template. Mm-hmm. You know, as much as we kind of like, you know, Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece to an extent. Like, you know, My Hero Academia is a really good reference. Probably the other big reference that I would call to is One Punch Man, which kind of takes a lot of the shonen archetype and just flips it on its head, turns it around, throws it sideways. Mm-hmm. So,
and then defeats it with one punch.
Pretty much.
Because he's super powerful.
Yes. And also super bored.
Because he is super powerful.
Exactly. But it does bring up a really interesting point, though, about, like, whether, like, because amongst the three of us, like, our inner circle, for the most part, we're always like, yeah, you know, like My Hero Academia, One Punch Man. But, you know, again, we have to bring up the general public, which is like the general like anime watching public is going to have a different mindset than, you know, hardcore weeaboo trash like us. Mm-hmm. A good example, a friend of like a mutual friend of ours had some folks come over, and, you know, said friend really did not have too much of a liking towards One Punch Man. And they were just like, well, why? You know, it's a really cool series and whatnot. And it's because, like, well, I don't like it because they defeat everything, and because he defeats everything in one punch. And what happened at that point, what they realized was that they're looking at One Punch Man and they're not taking in the big overall joke of One Punch Man. Is that he's supposed to be able to defeat everything with one punch. That's what fuels that's the gag, that's the joke, you know, and that's what fuels the whole storyline. So, yeah, I mean, like, we kind of like these like kind of subversive anime, but the question is are they really going to have the strength to make it all the way up in the Shonen Jump popularity polls? That's going to be kind of the real test of things.
My vote is like not likely, which I will go back and say that something that ticks the correct boxes, but does so in a way that catches people's eye. Like you have Bleach, Shinigami. That hadn't really been done before. And of course they also happen to forget that they're Shinigami at times, but we won't hold that against it. And with Naruto, ninjas. They're, most of the time when ninjas show up, they're very straight-laced. Not as in super serious, but they're less than human. They are shadows. Or blades in the shadows. And with One Piece, I think it was just Oda's character designs.
Yeah.
That really sold that one.
Mm-hmm. Because it was very much, it was kind of reminiscent of a lot of early Disney works, if you really think about it. A lot of early Disney and a lot of early Looney Tunes, and that was very, you know, everybody's stretchy and expressive, and, you know, there's a lot more to everything, and especially I think the one thing that really helped in One Piece is that, you know, except on a very rare, ultra important occasion, characters never really die in that series.
No.
Usually what happens is Luffy comes into town, beats the crap out of the main boss, and inexplicably the boss becomes a pal of the gang, you know?
Or dead. Dead has happened before.
Yeah, but again, it's like very, very a rare situation when that happens.
That and they're villains of the week, so you introduce a villain and you kill them off. Okay, that's just what you get for stepping to the man, or the crew, or whoever your protagonist is. But having a long-standing character die is something that alters the way it goes, because your villain of the week, they're an obstacle to the heroes. They're probably not going to mourn their loss unless they had some pathos-forcing scene where our mother has the same name.
Yeah.
Curse you, cruel fate.
Oh, good times, times.
I think another thing that determines the longevity of the shows, aside from the audience that changes, is Japan itself as a country changing, the culture itself changing, and what they produce depends on what happens in the country itself, you know.
Yeah, that is true as well. I mean, you know, a lot of, like, anime in general has kind of made a massive shift from when, you know, I was kind of getting into it back in the 80s and especially early 90s to where it, like, was in the 2000s, and even now, like, in the 2010 decade, you know, a lot of, like, the stories that are being told and the designs, everything else is, they've taken massive shifts. So that does play a lot into it as well. But yeah, like drop us a line. Let us know what you think. What do you guys think would be two really good Shonen Jump anime that could fill in the void of Naruto and Bleach both taking their leaves? Yeah, we'd like to hear from you guys.
Hunter x Hunter.
That can't really count because dude takes a break every few months for Monster Hunter.
If it were going to have its spot, it would have taken it by now.
Yeah, unfortunately, dude kind of blew it. Although, like, I did look into a story on that. Like, part of what caused it is that he caused himself a massive back injury. Because he used to apparently do, like, this is even back to, like, Yu Yu Hakusho days, where a dude apparently would sit there and do all of his drawing and writing and everything while laying on his stomach, instead of sitting at a desk proper. And as a result, it gave him such a massive amount of injuries, and it's one of the reasons why he, besides Monster Hunter, that he's really sporadic on working on the manga, is that it's physically rough for him to do so. But yeah, so the last thing we kind of want to touch upon tonight is, like we kind of talked about a few minutes ago, like everybody that you're listening to right now, we're pretty much, pretty hardcore American otaku. We're into a lot of different shows. We know our stuff, like of our respective genres. And, it's like, for us, like, we kind of live and breathe anime along with video games and whatnot. But there are a lot of folks who are, not necessarily as well equipped in that kind of knowledge, or that can be easily scared by something. And I was thinking about this week when, the previous week, I was talking with a friend of mine. Like, she was overhearing me, like, conversations about anime and whatnot. And she's like, I've watched anime before. Well, what have you watched? Death Note. And I was just kind of like, at first I had to lock in, and I was just like, oh, you poor thing. Because, like, of course, everybody knows about the second half of Death Note and just how fucking horrible it is. Yeah. But at the same token, then it became, okay, like, shit, what would I recommend? And that's kind of something I want to talk about tonight. It's like, when you're a hardcore otaku, what would you necessarily recommend to get somebody who is just completely brand spanking new? Like, the only thing they've watched is a so-called, like, a popular series, like a Death Note, or, maybe seen something like Dragon Ball Z off Toonami, and just is like, okay, this is cute. So, what would you try to get? What would be the series that you would want to use to hook folks in a little bit more?
Well, I would get them started where I started personally. Which, it's still kind of mainstream, and they probably would have seen it already, but I would suggest Sailor Moon.
Yeah, that is pretty mainstream. I would suggest Trigun, because it has a little bit of everything. It has a little bit of action. It has a little bit of existential questioning, a little bit of comedy. So I think that has a little bit of everything for someone to look at and say, okay, this is anime. I can, now I know what I like.
Those are two really good suggestions, and I would completely go with you on that one. To take it a little bit further, though, like, say you've got somebody who's kind of like one of those, like, snobs about, this looks really old. I don't know if I can watch this. It's in, like, it's in SD. Why didn't they film this in HD kind of stuff? And there are going to be those types. Mm-hmm. Like, again, like, we're kind of, like, we are kind of approaching this still as otaku who are just like, Trigun and Sailor Moon are two really essential series, but there are a lot of folks that are, like, kind of like, it's like 80s, 90s stuff.
Well, to be fair, I felt the same way about Saint Seiya when I had someone try to get me to watch it. I was completely turned off because for the longest time, I was not into 80s anime. Despite the fact that I had been practically raised on it. So, I recanted my sins and will stop interrupting you.
Well, this is the idea that I came up with, and that, like, the series that I actually recommended to her over, like, a message, and it was, actually Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Because to me, that series kind of, like, has enough of a lot of the popular elements. It's got a lot of comedy to it. It's got a lot of sadness and drama to it, and it's got a lot of action to it as well. I think it kind of hits all those beats, and on top of that, it's a modern filmed anime, which may be a much easier sell for those who are in their like early 20s now, whereas we are all pretty much in our 30s to mid 30s. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of my kind of idea. But besides that, you know, what do you guys think would be some essential like films that could easily hook somebody in? Now, like, you know, the obvious one we could hit on is pretty much any fucking Ghibli film. I mean,
yeah,
you could pretty much show them anything of that, and it'd just be like, ooh. But at the same token, though, Ghibli films are kind of almost universal. So what I kind of want to do is take them completely out of the equation.
Yes.
What would be a good non-Ghibli film that you could use to sell somebody on anime?
King of Thorn. That's my suggestion.
King of Thorn, that's an interesting one. Go ahead and explain that one out a little bit for those who don't know about it.
Okay, so King of Thorn takes place in a very near future, and there's an epidemic where people start turning into stone. Hint, hint. And so there's a center, of course, like an institute, that is working on a cure for this illness, this plague, this epidemic. And it's what happens inside the institute that the show is really about. So, and it has, again, like those elements. You have the comedy, the action, the drama, and also the little bit of sadness there. And, you know, very good story. And I think it's a movie that any audience can watch. Like a kid of 12 years old can watch it as well as a guy 33-year-old.
And what say you, Hans?
I would actually direct them towards the live-action Kenshin movies if you can get a hold of them.
Back to the Edo period.
I walked right into that.
Yes, you did.
Man. And it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I didn't do the delivery.
Oh no, I walked face first into it, and someone just handed me my prize. So, but as I was saying, live-action versions of anime, which your case in point, they had already seen Death Note, so I couldn't obviously recommend the Death Note live-action movies, but they do exist. Like, I'm not sure if I can recommend it, because A, it's not out, and I'm still kind of on the fence of them actually remaking it, but the Ghost in the Shell movie that's coming out. If it turns out to be decent, you could take someone who's not into anime and go, oh yeah, that's an anime. And then, if they respond to the movie, you could show them the animated movie, or the series, the standalone complex could come out of that. I actually think that's why they make live-action anime movies. It's like, normal people have money too. Why don't we make a live-action movie? Because normal people watch those. They're not going to go out and watch an anime movie, and we've already got the otaku's money.
Yeah.
So let's make a live-action version of our property, and that'll get us the normal people money.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. You know, using the live-action movies to funnel direction towards the anime and manga. That's a really good take as well. My idea actually comes from a guy, like a peep who used to be part of the Ghibli system, but he kind of broke off and has done his own thing, and he kind of got his start working on the first Digimon movie before he upgraded, and then he first put out the film Summer Wars. But the film that I would actually recommend is Wolf Children. Mainly because it's got more of a drama feel to it, which could appeal to a lot of folks.
That's the one about the Indians, right? The Indian kids? No? Okay, never mind. Sorry.
No. Basically a short synopsis. Basically, a shape-shifting wolf man falls in love with a lady. she has their children, but for reasons, he's not able to be there anymore. So, because they can't really exist like in the city environment, she takes them to the country to raise them there. And it's kind of basically about the progression of time. It's a film that touches upon, another common theme in a lot of Japanese stories about, the force of nature versus the force of civilization. And kind of the conflicts that can come of it. And the wolf children themselves are used to kind of reflect that. But I think with the exception of one particularly odd scene, which I will never understand why they animated that, it's actually a really good standalone flick. And I think that that could actually open the door into getting a lot of people into anime in general.
But after we do all this to bring people into the fold of anime, we're all going to start complaining that I liked anime before it was mainstream.
We always do that anyway, though. If you really think about it, it's like, I touched upon this years ago in a panel at Mid-South Con. It's just like, when people talk about classic anime, they're just like, usually the folks who grew up during the age of Star Blazers and Captain Harlock and Galaxy Express 999 are just like, man, I remember back in the day when anime was about Matsumoto and that shit was fucking hardcore. And then you have people in the 80s who are just kind of I remember back in the day when we had Voltron and Robotech and that shit was hardcore. And then you have people in the 90s who are just like, well, I remember back in the day when we had MD Geist and Geno Cyber and Hentai.
Yes.
Ninja Scroll. That shit was hardcore.
It was, for the record.
And it's just that. It's one of those deals of there's always going to be older folks that are going to want to be like, get off my lawn. But, anime fans for the most part, at least, there's some sort of, at least some sort of generational respect that does occur.
For the record, I was just making a joke.
Yeah, no, and I had to take the joke and make it into a mini topic.
Yeah,
one of my many, many, many talents.
Yeah, and I think also, anime is so inclusive that it doesn't matter what generation it is. Like you said, the reason why in the 80s, that was hardcore, and then the 90s, oh, that was hardcore, is because there is an anime for each generation and for each kind of person.
Not only that, but anime covers so many themes, genre, etc. that aside from, if you've only looked at, say, one series for an episode and then called it a day, it's very hard to typecast.
That is true. So yeah, if you guys have any thoughts on that as well, what would be a really good beginner style anime to get completely new folks into the genre? Again, drop us a line on that. We'd like to hear your suggestions. I could talk good.
He can. That is why he's our Fearless Nuwanda.
Fearless Billy Nuwanda.
I'm sorry, Fearless Billy Nuwanda the Panda.
Yes.
The third.
Yes. But yeah, any suggestions, definitely, would be appreciated, just because this is stuff that we always like to talk about, stuff that we always like to research into, and eventually stuff that we like to do panels on, in the future. So, at this point, I think we're going to kind of go ahead and wrap things up for this week. I feel we got a lot of work done and exfoliated a lot of our, trash weeaboo selves. So, at this point, I'd kind of like to go ahead and just state goodbyes from everybody. And we will look forward to hearing from y'all next week.
Parting is such sweet sorrow.
See you next week.